What's up, guys? I'm Mr. Second Passport, and if you're new to Ecuador, maybe you didn't realize that in 2016 there was a massive earthquake where hundreds, probably thousands of people died on the coast of Ecuador, and you could see scenes like this one, like these, and like this picture here, right? That's a good example. Whole hotels came pancaking down. Malls in Manta came crashing down and trapped people inside for sometimes days. Right? It was a bad scene, and a lot of scenes that look just like this, and just leveling entire places. Right? So anyway, but nobody ever talks about when will the next one be. Maybe because nobody knows for sure, of course, but mathematically we can look at a history of the Ecuador coastline and see and kind of deduce from that a little bit when the next one might actually be, more or less. You can see like this from this University of California, Berkeley map, seismic activity map, where the problem area is, and it's about from Bahia, about an hour and a half or so north of Manta, on up through Esmeraldas, is that main area. And you can kind of see why if you look at the actual fault lines, right? The big one is runs just off the coast of Ecuador, kind of parallel. But you can see here the problem areas are from about Bahia on up through Esmeraldas here, and actually on up to the border of Colombia. And there's actually this area here that hasn't produced too much problems in the recent history, and it's right off the coast of Manta. In the last big quake, there was interestingly a whole bunch of damage from about Esmeraldas on down to Pedernales, which was the epicenter, through Bahia, tons of damage. All this whole coast got hit really hard. It looked like a war zone, they say in Canoa, and then, this beachhead here where a lot of expats like San Clemente, San Jacinto, Crucita felt it but didn't get hit too hard with damage, right? But then down here in Manta and Puerto Viejo, a ton of damage, right? Especially in the old town of Manta here on the east side of Manta and down through to Puerto Viejo. And this chart kind of explains why. I mean, you can see how there's been kind of a fault line that's opened up here right around the Puerto Viejo area on up to the east side of Manta, right? And you can kind of see where the maybe why in this area wasn't affected too bad by the last quake, but this area was. Let's talk about the when. When could the next huge quake be? Well, for that we have to look at a history of the biggest quakes in Ecuador and just kind of extrapolate the ones that happened on the coast, which is what I did for this little study that I did. And imagine that, 1906, there was a quake in Esmeraldas that was 8.8 on the Richter scale. The one that happened in 2016 was, as you can see here, the one that happened in 2016 was just a 7.8, which is huge. But an 8.8 is 10 times stronger than a 7.8, more or less. So, I mean, it goes up exponentially in strength. So, if there was another 8.8, I think it would level pretty much all man-made structures on the affected parts of the Ecuador coast, in my opinion. But it is something to keep in mind when building, and make sure you build with, earthquake friendly. In my humble opinion, what I saw, the structures that did well in the 7.8 quake had a light roof, right? So not a cement roof, right? But you had maybe a tile roof or a wood roof. For me, that really just takes a lot of the weight off the structure, and it gives you bend, right, when it comes to the structure on one whole side of the building. And if you have a wooden floor, an uplifted wooden floor, now you have bend on two sides of the structure. So again, even more bend in the case of an earthquake. So just from what I saw before and after the quake, which buildings did pretty well? For me, it was the ones that had bend on at least one or both sides of the structure. Maybe walls that were wooden or something, or some kind of bend to it. So maybe mixed construction with bamboo and brick or cement as well. So anyway, that's just what I saw. So maybe if you're going to buy in this area, build with earthquakes in mind. And if we look at the history of the big quakes on the coast of Ecuador, right, the time in between each quake, right, are as following since about the 1940s. 11 years, 5 years, 12 years, 9, 11, and 18, right? So again, what can we deduce from this maybe? Well, mathematically speaking, just kind of light, like ninth grade mathematically speaking, we could take that obviously there's a trend that we can see, and that is more years in between the quake on the coast of Ecuador, and then less years, and then more, and then less. But this last time broke trend, more and then more. So maybe that means we're in store here for a less, right? A less amount of time before the next big quake. And the range, like if we just look at the range of the amount of years in between the big quakes, the big ones on the coast, they range from 5 years to 18, right? So 2016 was the last big quake, the big one. And that was already 6 years ago. So we are in the range already, 5 to 18. We are in the range when something could happen. But the average, right, or the mean of the time periods between quakes is 11 years. So that means on average about once every 11 years there's a big quake on the coast of Ecuador. So now that we're in the range of 5 to 18, we're actually now entering year 6 here since the last big quake. As we approach year 11, or over the next 5 years, it will become more and more probable that there will be a big quake, right? And then, according to the mathematics. And then, on the flip side of 11, the probability might start diminishing. But chances that we get a big quake, over the next couple years, like say within the next 4 or 5 years, is pretty likely, right? Pretty likely. So again, take this or leave it. Crucify me if you wish, but I haven't seen anyone come out and actually give their opinion based on the history of the region when the next big quake could happen, right? And so in my opinion, that is from now, or actually last year, all the way through the next 10 or so years, another big quake is most likely on the way if history repeats itself. But it's most likely to happen 5 years from now in 2027, which would be 11 years from the last previous huge, massive killer earthquake in 2016, April 16, 2016. We can think about it at least. It's something to think about. Just think about it before you invest maybe hundreds of thousands on the coast of Ecuador. Something to think about, right? That's all I'm saying here, right? If you do buy an existing structure, was it around in 2016 is a big selling point for me to see how it did in that quake. I'm Mr. Second Passport. If you like this, don't subscribe to the like button below and leave a comment with your opinion on this super interesting and controversial topic. Take care.